Right. So, Alex, we have a lot of opportunities to help people, and it's not unusual for somebody to come in with a portfolio that consists of some real estate, maybe some commercial properties, residentials, but also other assets that they have, more traditional assets, portfolio assets.
Right.
What's your experience been when somebody comes in and they're thinking that they want to sell? Do they need to sell? Or maybe that's not the best advice. Maybe we work through a case and case by case look at the properties and decide. Maybe we can advise them. Sometimes it's good to hang on. Does that bring any cases to mind or circumstances?
It does, and a lot of times the people that come in looking for that kind of help have been doing it all on their own, because those other assets and things that they have, maybe they've got a guy that's working with them on it, but
got a guy.
The guy doesn't want to do anything with the real estate.
Yeah.
And so if we were to look at the situation as a whole, all those pieces come into play together, and you can't isolate any one of them in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So when we look at the real estate, you have to start and make sure that the person knows what they have and how it's working for them. Because if they're working off numbers that are either outdated or they aren't factoring in all the expenses and taxes and things like that, then it can really change the picture a lot. So it is finding what is the best place to start. What are all the numbers to make sure that we're starting from the right place, and then taking it down piece by piece.
Well, I know we do. We always start with initial analysis, looking at everything they own, all the real estate that they've got, and reducing that down to what's the return on equity,
Right.
which is really a most pure method of determining how is this asset, how's this investment performing for them, returning for them. A lot of times folks will call in and they'll say, hey, I need this. I need a DST. I need a 1031. I need a triple net property. That's an opportunity for us to really help them out and say, well, why?
Right.
What is it? And, our fundamental premise is, what is the purpose? What are you trying to do? How will this change whatever we're talking about, or this analysis help you live your purpose?
Yeah. A lot of the people I talk with come in with this mindset of go with what you know.
Right.
They're in residential. They want to stay in residential. But they don't really want the texts from their tenants at 1 a.m. saying the toilet's leaking from the upstairs into the downstairs. What do we do? But they know residential.
Yeah.
So being able to disassociate that emotion and the connection that they have from the investment of the real estate to say, this can be working for you in a lot of different ways, and not necessarily ways that you have to learn about, but just ways that you can have this money working for you passively or allowing you to live the lifestyle you want.
Well, I know our approach is to really be looking at we don't start with a portfolio. We start with what is the purpose and the planning to get through. How do they plan their real estate so it's going to serve them? And then that tells us what to do with the portfolio. I mean, there are cases where we tell people, don't sell it. Keep it, You've had some of those in commercial properties.
Yeah, and people have triple net commercial properties of their own. Maybe it's a single tenant, large space that tenant's been in there for a long time. There aren't any problems. It's not just sell because you want to sell.
Yeah.
Sell if it makes sense. Sell if the timing's right. Sell if you're not making money from this property.
Yeah.
But if it's doing well, then there might not be a reason to.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of ways to get return from a property too, and some of them are, current income. Some of them are appreciation. It's not unusual for us to run into somebody where the income they're getting, believe it or not, it's psychic income. I mean, they feel good because they've got somebody on a property that they've been there for a long, long time.
Right.
And it gets to be like family almost. And it's, we'll tell them what we think, we'll tell them what the numbers say, but then it's up to them to decide whether somebody's just, the situation doesn't work anymore. It's not a good fit.
Yep.
Sometimes there's kind of that Dr. Phil component where you get into a family situation where something isn't working out. I think we talked about a few of those recently where it's just not the extended family, or it's just somebody who's been with them for years and it's just not working out so well.
Well, and that's that whole emotional piece of coming into play with a tenant you've had for 10, 15, 20 years. They're a great person. Maybe a couple of years go by, you haven't raised the rents. Now, all of a sudden, you're well below market values.
Yeah, that's easy to happen.
And you're paying for it.
Yep.
They're somebody you like, you care about, but being able to say, this is what I should be making from this property is a tough
Right.
bridge the gap.
Well, we see that a lot when it's owner managed.
Yeah.
When a management company can step in there. We have one client who likes to take in a new renter, and he says, "Look, at my partner. He's an attorney, and he's tough. So just keep in mind, if you're late, he's going to send you a letter. We're going to be all over you. Now, if you still want to rent." Anyway, it's been kind of funny.
Good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop. But he's the nicest guy in the world too, and he doesn't want to have to. So he's created this fictional partner that he will bring in if he has to.
Yeah.
So, a lot of aspects of property ownership, and it's an asset that can be one of the biggest assets for people because of the appreciation over many years, and it's a risky asset as far as the regulators are concerned because it's illiquid. You can't just plop a for sale sign out and then have money in one day later.
Yeah.
So there's so many things involved with it, and that's part of the coaching that we do.
Right. And really figuring out the timing for when to move and how to make these things happen, because they don't happen overnight.
Well, and knowing what are all the variables. Again, we get tired of saying it, but how hard are you working for your passive income?
Right.
That's a problem we try to solve.
Well, and I know we've been working on a couple of cases where selling for the right price is something that the client may be fixated on. I have to get this dollar value. And even then, why? Yeah. Why is that the value you have to get? And they think they're tied into specific returns or different things that are going to be generating that monthly check that they're so used to getting.
Yep.
And being able to look at it from a high-level view and really dial in those numbers to say, actually, you could sell for this amount and still get everything you're expecting.
Well, one of our favorite authors talks about, he's a military guy, but he talks about detaching.
Right.
And that's something that's very hard for people, especially with real estate, for whatever reason. We see it with stocks also. Somebody says, well, my grandfather gave me, this many shares of General Electric, and I'm never selling it.
Yeah.
So we say, well, then frame it and put it on the wall in your family room, because that's not an investment.
Right.
If you can't make it work for you when you need it to work for you. But the same thing with real estate.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny how that plays into the legacy aspect of real estate passing down through a family.
Yep.
One person has spent 30 years curating a portfolio of real estate. Their kids want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and I was reading an article recently, personal interest, but it was all about grandma's china. Okay, and how baby boomers and then the kids of baby boomers are not that interested. It's rare. I think it was a Forbes article. It was all about grandma's china. This had great import to them, but not so much for the kids. So, a big part is if you can solve those problems before you hand down the legacy assets and communicate well. That's something that we are able to foster working with families, is the communication about the importance or the history, or kids might think, "Ooh, that's the house that mom and dad were married and lived in right away," and mom and dad are feeling like, "Can you get a good return? Can you get a good price? Get that dude sold." So
got to make sure everyone's on the same page.
That's right.
You ever seen this movie Bridge on the River Kwai?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Alec Guinness.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan before he was Obi-Wan.
Exactly.
Yeah. What I love about that is there's so many stories. One of my sons in college was they used that as a story about first principles. And if I can go on about it for a minute, the first principles of these prisoners of war was to resist their captors, resist the Japanese. But then they got into building this bridge, giving them something to do. And that took on a mission of its own, took on a life of its own, building this bridge. And so when it finally came down to the end, they had to, now it was a critical thing as war material, as a strategic decision to blow this thing up. And they were torn because now they put all this effort into it. They got away from their first principles, which was, this is war. We're going to resist the Japanese, resist our captors. And it's so easy to do that with real estate, actually with any kind of investment.
Right.
But you get into this real estate thinking, okay, this is going to provide a lifestyle for me. It's going to provide for my family. And 30 years later, you're wake up one morning and you might realize, well, wait a second, this isn't providing a lifestyle from me. This is demanding a lifestyle from me. Right. And it's not a lifestyle I want anymore.
Yep.
I don't want to be working for my passive income. We call that a job. So I think It's funny what triggers different ideas. Maybe we'll talk about some John Wayne war movies next week.
Sounds good. I mean, it makes me think of a guy I was talking to the other day. He was trying to plan a fishing trip for 3 weeks. He wanted to be gone. Bounce around to a bunch of different states. And the nagging thought in the back of his mind was that something's going to happen with one of my properties. And he was about a week into his fishing trip.
Yeah.
And something happened with one of his properties.
Oh boy.
He had to cut it short and go home.
Yeah.
And it's just that same idea of my lifestyle has changed. I want to do other things.
Yeah.
And these investments, as good as they are, as much as they've grown, are holding me back.
Yeah.
So what do I do?
Yeah. Well, with some of the tools that we have, they didn't even exist 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the democratizing, if you will, of good investment solutions, good portfolio level solutions, again, purpose has to come first, and then that informs our planning, and the planning then can inform what portfolio decision. But there's so many more options now available than there were 20, much less 30 years ago.
Impact 1031 is a DBA of Ridgegate Financial, LLC. Not an offer to buy nor a solicitation to sell securities. All investing involves risk. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Speak to your finance and/or tax professional prior to investing. Securities offered through Emerson Equity, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC. Only available in states where Emerson Equity, LLC is registered. Emerson Equity, LLC is not affiliated with any other entities identified in this communication. Investment advisory services offered through AD Wealth Management. Emerson Equity, Ridgegate Financial, and AD Wealth Management are not affiliated entities.